able to share a little bit of my own story. I've got two Bible verses to share with you. The first is from Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. The heart is deceitful above all things. And from Proverbs chapter 16, verse 25, there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof is death. And it really comes down to my own journey when it comes to diabetes. And that is that back in February, my two friends, Derek and Brad, were with me at the minister's retreat at Avondale. And there was a free health screening that needed to be done. And I said to my friends, I'm fine. And they looked at me and said, no, you're fat. You need to actually go and see these men. And I said, I mean, it's terrible what Western Australians think they can say to a president, but they do it quite regularly, which is why it's been quite a strange treat coming to Sydney and people not saying those kinds of things. Chester, it's quite an amazing difference. So these men said, we'll come with you. And sure enough, Brad set up an appointment, and so did I, and Derek chickened out. Derek decided that he was not going to go because he felt that he already knew how bad things were for him. And so he decided that he was going to allow the two of us to go by ourselves. Now, I'm not a very big fan of doctors. I think they're wonderful human beings, but doctors have this propensity to give you bad news. And so I try and stay away from them because bad news I can get from anything on Facebook, Twitter, and CNN. So it doesn't really matter where I'm at, bad news seems to follow. And while doctors are wonderful people, Chester, you're a wonderful man, there's no reason to go and see a doctor because, like I said, they're going to give you bad news. And I have for myself a particular reason why I don't like going to see medical professionals. And that is that when I was 6 years old, my parents in Lubumbashi, in Zaire, took me to see a dentist. And that dentist was kind enough to take two of my teeth out without any anesthetic. And so from the age of 6 years, anybody that wears a white trench coat, I see them as anathema. And they must be kept far away. In fact, my blood pressure actually goes up the moment that I see a medical professional. And so I went that morning, that Friday, I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday morning, we went to do the health test. And first thing that they do is they take your blood. There was somebody who did it from the sand who was just really, really good, was talking to me and slipped in the needle, never felt a thing. So that was good. Then they put me on this wonderful machine that's supposed to actually take a look at your interior and give you a biological age. And that machine is actually quite frightening. You stand on it, it's cold, and so therefore you're feeling quite uncomfortable. People are looking at you, you feel a little bit, like an animal in the zoo. And then it spits out this information. Now, how does this machine have the ability to look at you and say, this is what your biological age really is? I think somebody has to feed in some data. But my biological age was 63. That was a bit of concern. I didn't want to be as old as Glenn. So it was really quite a shock for me when I found that out. And my actual age is 48, and I'm turning 49 in a month and a half. And that was a real wake-up call. The next station was the blood pressure station, and they stuck my arm into the little machine. They did it twice because the first time they were a little bit concerned that it might be high. The second time the nurse said, you need to go and sit in the naughty corner. And that's exactly her words. So I sat in the naughty corner because remember, everybody's wearing white and so my blood pressure is high. And the doctor had to come and actually take my blood pressure. And he did it and said, well, it's slightly high. You should go and see a doctor, but I'm not terribly worried. You might die tomorrow, but it's all going to be okay. I will not sign off on the fact that I've done this for you. So I walked through the rest of the day, realizing that by now things were probably not going to be very good, and trying to convince myself that everything was just fine. I hadn't been to a doctor in quite some time. I knew that I'd put on some weight, and I blamed it on the fact that I'm a stress eater, and when you become a president, even of a conference like Western Australia, which is wonderful, and working with people like Peter, which is fantastic, you don't think that you're actually under that much stress, but I am a stress eater, and therefore I eat a lot of food all day long. And so when I became conference president in 2014, or was it 2013, September, I gained 7 kilos within 8 months. As a youth director, I'd had a lot of fun, and I'd gained 4 kilos as a youth director, but I'd been able to keep it at bay because I walked with pathfinders, backpacking, and all those different things. But as a conference president, what you do is you sit a lot. You sit in a car, you sit in a plane, you sit at your office. People come in to complain to you, so you're having to listen to all of their whinges, and then you're trying to make sure that you're not eating because you're overstressed by the fact that you're taking on all the others' burdens. So I'd gained a significant amount of weight. Now, my wife never said a thing. She just thought I was just happier to be around. She'd hug me, because you don't, as husband and wife, you don't really talk much about each other's weight, because that just ends up being a poor idea. As I learned very early in my marriage. So these are things that you learn with time, and as we were going on, I'd say, babe, I think I need to get a new pair of pants. Oh, well, that's all right. And she'd go and, we'd go and buy a pair of pants together. And of course, over time, the pants got wider. And I was wearing 97 centimeter pants around my waist, but the doctor, when they did a calculation of my waist, said it was 104. So I was really trying to fit into a pair of pants that really quite weren't. I thought they looked fantastic on me, because the heart is deceitful above all things. And for men, as soon as you stand in front of a mirror and you look at a mirror, well, we look pretty good. And a woman stands in front of a mirror, she looks pretty bad. Not to us, but to herself. And so here I was, thinking that everything was fine. I remember on the second day at Avondale, while we were waiting for the results, I woke up and stood in front of the mirror in the girls' dorm and looked at myself in my underwear, and I took a shot. I took a selfie of me, never to go on Facebook, a selfie of me that I wanted to make sure and keep as a memory of how fat I really was. And when you take a picture of it, you go, I thought I looked a lot more svelte than that. I thought I was actually fairly streamlined. And what makes it worse is the fact that when it comes to my family, I actually have a history of diabetes type 2. My grandfather had diabetes type 2. My father has diabetes type 2, borderline. He keeps it at bay. My uncle has diabetes type 2 and actually has insulin. And we think that there were a number of other family members that had diabetes type 2. So I should have been prepared for it, and I should have been actually taking better care of myself. But in my 40s, I said, mañana, next day. We'll take care of it tomorrow. We'll do the exercises tomorrow. Everything's fine. There's no need to actually worry about this much. And why go to a doctor? Because they only give you bad news. So there I was, waiting for the dreaded day. And Friday came, and when Friday came, we had a program with Dr. Ross. Now, Dr. Ross is a lovely man. He gives you bad news in the most kind and gentlest of tones. He has this ability to actually share with you, you're about to die, but don't worry, God is with you. How gentle and how kind. And he was speaking to 250 of us as ministers and our spouses, and sharing with us that this was really a very bad example to the Seventh-day Adventist Church at large, that you as our ministers are doing so poorly when it comes to your health. He said there's a significant number of you, between 60 and 70%, who are actually on the borderline of heart disease, and he just started listing off a whole bunch of other diseases. He said the worst part of it is that you're more than likely to actually die of stroke than heart disease, and what good are you to the church if you're unable to speak, communicate, and share the love of Jesus when you're unable to actually speak? So that was really quite confronting. And then he gave us out the tests, the results, and my test results said that after a 12-hour fast, that my blood sugar was 9.6. I felt fine. There was no problems at all. I was wide awake, full of energy. 9.6. I thought there must be something wrong. I've had too many wheat bix with sugar on it, and too much of soy good. Or is it so good? So good. Soy good, whatever it is. And so I had to actually start thinking about how bad my life really was. Cholesterol was high. Blood pressure was okay. Everything else was fine, but the cholesterol and the blood sugar was bad. He said, you need to go and see a doctor, and you need to do it quickly. Well, what doctor do you go and see? So I called Dr. Ross, and I said, all right, you need to tell me what doctor I need to go and see. You give me this death sentence. I want to make sure that you tell me where I should go, because I need to have a doctor that's going to tell me like it is, but then it's not going to be condescending. You know what I mean? You should know better, Pastor Johnson. You're a Seventh-day Adventist. I don't need that. I already know that. I've been hiding from that for a long, long time. And so I found Dr. Andrew Pennington, who has the lifestyle clinic up here, and Dr. Ross told me to go there. And I walked into Dr. Pennington's office, and right from the get-go, I knew that this was the right doctor. He looked at me and said, Pastor Johnson, you're my new conference president. I've never met you before. I'm so glad that you're here. I don't want you to die, so we're going to make sure that you're not going to die. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to change your habits, and by the time September comes around, in 2 months' time, I want you to lose 10 kilos. And by the time you've lost that 10 kilos, I think that we'll be able to keep you on a diet-based, plant-based, nutritional form of eating that will actually get your cholesterol down and will get you on the right path so that you never have to become insulin dependent, and we think that we can actually reverse the diabetes in your life. And that's good news. So I sat in his office and tears came down my face as I was thinking that I would actually get to see my daughter getting married. That's a dream. My son graduating from high school, another dream. And my wife, long into old age. We just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. And it was good to know that there was actually good news available. And when I saw that there was the 10,000 Toes campaign as well, and realized how prevalent it is within our Pacific Island communities, and how prevalent it is within our Western communities as well, because of the refined foods that we eat, the fat that we eat, the sugar that we have. I mean, like I said, I used to love my bowl of Wheat Bix, good, healthy Wheat Bix, not realizing how many carbohydrates are in it, and carbohydrates turn into sugar. And then adding 2 spoons of sugar on top, the brown sugar that just nicely, it's so beautiful. And then adding milk, and adding all that fat, and not realizing that it was actually affecting my body in the way that it was. To now having Wheat Bix with water flavored like almonds, which they call almond milk. I have no idea why. Unsweetened, so there's really no point to it. As much as sanitarian would like you to believe that it's good for you. With berries and nuts placed on top, and that's my breakfast with a little spoonful of acacia berry. And then when I come to lunch, I go to one of the little restaurants nearby, and I make sure and get unsalted, some form of very low noodles, very little rice. And I love rice, and now I'm eating very little rice. I can't have too much bread, but I can have sourdough bread because it's actually good for your gut and actually changes the way in which you metabolize the carbohydrates. So a lot of these things that I'm having to learn, but the best part about it is that when it comes to my family, we've actually changed our eating habits as a whole family in order to meet the needs that I have. Now my kids are dying, but my wife and I are actually enjoying the change. At nighttime, it's a very small amount of food. At breakfast time, it is what I shared with you. And quite often I go with only 2 meals a day just to ensure that my body is not overworking. And so since that February date, I've lost 6.5, almost 7 kilos. I haven't done an ounce of exercise because 80% of weight loss has to do with your food, not with your exercise. And frankly, my work weeks are between 80 and 100 hours. There is no time for exercise. There's only exercise of the brain. So we've got to find ways in which to balance that out, and we're working on that because the doc wants me to do 4 times per week, 15 minutes of exercise at high intensity rates, and he figures that that'll be enough to actually work off the sugar from the carbohydrates and the other bits and pieces that are coming into my system. So that's part 2, but it's taken me this long to actually get to part 2. And the future looks bright, but the future looks bright because of good medical health practice with a Seventh-day Adventist identity, with an understanding of our health message to hold me accountable. And not everybody has that available to them, which is why it's so important for us to actually work with the 10,000 Toes Project and find ways in which we as a church can engage with the community and help them understand that their lives can be so much better with so few side effects like stroke, heart disease, and early death, when they could be so much better sharing the gospel out of strength and health. That's my story. And I look at you, you all look very, very healthy, which is fantastic. There's a few of you that maybe aren't as healthy as others. And let me just remind you, the heart is deceitful above all things. There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof is death.